What happens when the queen of kindness is exposed for being not so kind? For nearly 2 decades, Ellen DeGeneres was the undisputed darling of daytime television. She danced her way into millions of homes, cracked jokes with A-list celebrities, and even made dreams come true with her famous giveaways. She wasn't just a talk show host. She was a brand, a symbol of positivity, inclusion, and kindness. But in 2020, that carefully crafted image began to crumble. Former employees, guests, and even fellow celebrities started speaking out, painting a very different picture of Ellen, one that was far from the warm, bubbly persona she displayed on camera. The allegations ranged from cold, dismissive behavior to outright hostility, and suddenly, "Be kind" started to feel like a hollow catchphrase. So when the Ellen DeGeneres show was canceled in 2022, many saw it as the inevitable consequence of her actions. But instead of reflecting on the accusations, apologizing, or taking responsibility, Ellen has chosen a different route: victimhood. In her recent Netflix special, she suggests that she was unfairly targeted by cancel culture, that she, of all people, became Hollywood's punching bag. But is that really the full story? Ellen DeGeneres wasn't just a talk show host, she was a phenomenon. For years, she cultivated an image of warmth and generosity, bringing laughter into people's homes while positioning herself as a champion of kindness. But beneath the surface, cracks in that image had been forming for a long time. The public just wasn't looking closely enough. Rumors about Ellen's off-screen behavior had circulated for years, often dismissed as exaggerated or taken out of context. But the real turning point came in 2020, when an avalanche of accusations exposed what many had suspected. Ellen's carefully crafted persona was just that, carefully crafted. It started small, with whispers from former employees about an allegedly toxic work environment. What began as a few isolated complaints quickly spiraled into a full-scale reckoning as more and more people stepped forward to share their experiences. Staff members described an atmosphere of fear behind the scenes, where mistreatment was allegedly commonplace. Some employees claimed they were penalized for taking medical leave, while others said they were instructed not to make eye contact with Ellen. These weren't just minor grievances. They painted a picture of a workplace culture built on intimidation. And yet, even as these claims spread, Ellen herself remained silent. But the moment that truly shattered her untouchable status wasn't just workplace complaints. It was the voices of celebrities. Dakota Johnson's now viral moment on The Ellen Show, where she subtly called out Ellen for lying about not being invited to her birthday party, was the first sign that guests weren't always having a great time on her show. What had once seemed like playful banter suddenly felt uncomfortable, and it made people wonder, if Ellen wasn't even nice to A-listers, how did she treat those with less power? From there, the floodgates opened. Comedian Kevin T. Porter's viral Twitter thread encouraged people to share their worst Ellen stories, and the response was overwhelming. Waitstaff, makeup artists, security guards, people who had crossed paths with Ellen in everyday situations, all came forward with eerily similar experiences. The message was clear. The woman who told the world to be kind didn't always practice what she preached. At first, Ellen's team tried to dismiss the controversy, suggesting that a few disgruntled employees and internet gossip weren't enough to discredit an entire career. But then the bombshell report from BuzzFeed News landed, detailing serious allegations of workplace toxicity, including claims of racism, fear-mongering, and unprofessional conduct by senior producers. While Ellen wasn't directly accused of the worst behaviors, critics argued that as the face of the show, she bore responsibility for the environment she allowed to thrive. Public sentiment shifted fast. Ellen, once beloved, was now seen as inauthentic, and the backlash was swift. Sponsors distanced themselves, ratings plummeted, and ultimately, the once unthinkable happened. The Ellen DeGeneres show was canceled. But even after the show's end, the controversy didn't fade. And now, with her Netflix special attempting to rewrite history, the question remains, did Ellen ever truly learn from her fall? While the public was already turning against Ellen, some of the harshest critiques came from within Hollywood itself. It wasn't just former employees or internet users calling her out. Big names in the industry started speaking up, and they weren't holding back. Schneider, known for his unapologetic takes on Hollywood culture, didn't mince words when discussing Ellen's attempt at a comeback. He criticized her Netflix special for what he saw as a complete deflection from the real issue. According to Schneider, this wasn't about cancel culture. It was about Ellen's long history of treating people poorly finally catching up with her. He argued that instead of acknowledging her actions, Ellen was shifting the blame onto the audience, portraying herself as the real victim rather than the people she had hurt. To him, this was a classic case of a celebrity refusing to take responsibility, choosing instead to spin the narrative in their favor. Megyn Kelly echoed similar sentiments. She pointed out the irony of Ellen blaming cancel culture while ignoring the fact that her downfall was largely self-inflicted. Kelly argued that this wasn't a case of an innocent celebrity being unfairly targeted, but rather an example of someone who benefited from an industry that turned a blind eye for years, until it no longer could. What frustrated her most was Ellen's refusal to truly apologize. Even when addressing the controversy, Ellen seemed more focused on how she had suffered, rather than acknowledging how her alleged behavior had affected others. Kelly suggested that if Ellen had come forward with genuine remorse and accountability, the public might have been more forgiving. But instead, she doubled down, painting herself as misunderstood rather than culpable. Then there's Rosie O'Donnell. Unlike Schneider and Kelly, Rosie wasn't just critiquing Ellen from the sidelines, she had personal experience with her. The two had once been friendly, but over the years, their relationship soured. Rosie has spoken openly about how Ellen distanced herself from her, particularly when it was no longer convenient to be associated with her. In interviews, Rosie described Ellen as dismissive and unwilling to show professional courtesy, even going so far as to say that Ellen never really liked her. For Rosie, this wasn't just about how Ellen treated her own employees, it was about how she treated everyone in her orbit. To Rosie, Ellen's behavior wasn't just an isolated incident, it was a consistent pattern of looking out for herself at the expense of others. Hollywood is a place where image is everything, and for years Ellen maintained hers flawlessly. But as these criticisms mounted, the cracks in her carefully curated persona became impossible to ignore. The people calling her out weren't anonymous internet users. They were peers, colleagues, and industry veterans who had seen firsthand how Ellen operated behind the scenes. And when Hollywood turns against one of its own, it's often a sign that the tide has permanently shifted. But the biggest question remains, is there any way for Ellen to recover from this? Or is she destined to remain a fallen icon, forever remembered not for her achievements, but for the way it all came crashing down? Ellen's downfall wasn't just a public relations crisis. It was a cultural shift. The very industry that once celebrated her as a trailblazer had begun to hold its icons to a higher standard. In the past, powerful figures in entertainment could dismiss allegations with a well-crafted apology or a carefully managed PR campaign. But in the age of social media, audiences demand more than damage control. They expect genuine accountability. And that's where Ellen seems to be struggling. One of the biggest roadblocks to her comeback is that she never truly addressed the core criticisms against her. Instead of acknowledging the specific ways she may have mistreated employees, guests, and colleagues, she framed the backlash as an overreaction, a case of cancel culture gone too far. But the issue wasn't just an internet pile-on. It was years of negative stories reaching a boiling point, with former staff members and even celebrities stepping forward to share experiences that contradicted her on-screen persona. By dismissing these concerns rather than confronting them head-on, Ellen has left little room for redemption. Then there's the question of timing. Hollywood loves a redemption arc, but only when it's handled the right way. Figures like Robert Downey Jr. and Drew Barrymore have made incredible comebacks, but they did so by showing personal growth and acknowledging their past missteps. Ellen, on the other hand, seems to be skipping the accountability phase entirely. Instead of expressing a deeper understanding of why people turned on her, she's leaning into the idea that she was unfairly canceled. This approach doesn't just alienate critics, it also makes it harder for even her loyal fans to fully support her return. But perhaps the most significant challenge to Ellen's comeback is the shifting landscape of entertainment itself. The talk show format that made her a household name is no longer as dominant as it once was. Social media platforms like YouTube, TikTok, and podcasts have given audiences direct access to unfiltered, real-time content from creators they trust. In this environment, the carefully controlled image Ellen cultivated over the years feels outdated. If she truly wants to make a return, she may need to find a new way to connect with audiences, one that relies less on her old brand of staged kindness and more on authenticity. That leaves us with a big question. Does Ellen want to change? Or is she hoping that time alone will be enough for people to forget? Her Netflix special suggests she's not ready to take full responsibility yet, but in Hollywood, reinvention is always possible. The real question is, will audiences be willing to give her another chance? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out our other videos for more deep dives into the biggest stories in entertainment. See you next time.